Alright, Victorum Gaming fans and Hail Caesar fans, we're back with another in our series covering different factions here, and today we are taking a look at the Thracians. So, a little bit of an interesting list here. So, cavalry does or can make up a decent part of the army, so up to a quarter. Infantry does have to be at least 75% though, so if you take your max cavalry, infantry is going to be the other 3/4 of your army, and that's basically it. The list does let you do a complete infantry army though, so again, not counting skirmishers. And of that infantry, though, 50% of the infantry have to be peltists. So the non-skirmisher infantry must be peltists. So that leaves a little bit of room for basically like the other sort of medium type infantry that basically you would be getting. So with that in mind, and then we have the usual division and skirmisher restrictions there. And beyond that, so we start off here with a pretty decent unit on the cavalry side. Medium cavalry with javelins, up to 1 unit. So very good clash value. Sustained is definitely drops off a little bit. So, it's not going to be that great in a prolonged fight. So really, you probably want to deal with things like light cavalry, maybe even light infantry, without any like special rules, skirmisher type units, because that morale save of 5 is also just not going to let you stick around all that long. But 27 points a unit, and you do just get 1 of them, so definitely worth considering that 1 unit at least, again, just for some mobility and some initial hard-hitting power. Then you have light cavalry armed with javelins as small units, so basically just lots of these little units here. Again, about the combat stats you might suspect, so clash of 5, again, against similar small and weak units, yeah, that might do well, but sustain of 3 is definitely not all that great. It does still give you a morale save of 6, but also a pretty good discount of 17 points there compared to the medium cavalry unit. And again, lots and lots of javelin action here in this list. And then sort of the core here of our infantry, the peltist light infantry armed with javelins and shields. So again, these Thracian peltists are kind of like the elite peltists, basically. And starting off, so for light infantry, they have that typical stat line, so 5s on clash sustained. Again, rock solid short range fighting, 6-up save, 20 points a unit. So a little expensive for light infantry, I think, but the fact that you get so many of them, and there's all these other upgrades and stuff that you can do, so there's potential to work with that. But regardless, you're going to be fielding a lot of them, so at least half of your infantry will be these peltists. You can field them as mixed javelins and long spears, just to add a little bit more punch there. And that does add 3 points to the unit, and extra to make long spear peltists tough fighters. So and this doesn't have a restriction, so basically it's just if you want to spend the points, 1 extra point for tough fighters, that starts to transform these guys from light infantry to a little bit more durable of a unit. And then more upgrades, but wait, there's more, there's always more. Extra to give the peltists double-handed rumphia, hopefully we're pronouncing that right, and javelins. So it's actually a really cool weapon. So double check on that. You'll like that. But basically bumps the clash value up to 6, and now we're into that medium infantry territory. And then you can make that subgroup of those basically also tough fighters for another point per unit. So basically you go off of that base 20 points, and then if you want to give them the rumphia, it's 22 points, make them tough fighters 23. So pretty decent overall. And again, bumping that clash up to 6 just starts bringing them into that medium territory. Now again, 6-up morale saves, and as you can kind of see for the rest of the list here, there's really not much in the way of morale saves or armor, however you want to think of it in this list. 5-up is honestly the best you get there with that medium cavalry, and that's just that 1 unit. So this is going to be a list where you're going to have to play very carefully, very smart. Use the fact that basically everything in your army has javelins, and you're just going to have to whittle away at the enemy, start getting some damage and getting them to that stamina threshold, and then hopefully start winning some fights. And again, picking and choosing the fights is going to be key, because as good as some of the things are in here, they're still overall not that great. and that's not going to let you again be a very durable army. So it's going to be making use of a lot of like small unit tactics with like light cavalry, and just getting in your opponent's way, messing them up, kiting them into bad positions, all kinds of stuff like that. But again, 75% of the army has to be infantry, and 50% of that has to be the peltasts. So playing around with the different combinations of units there. And again, there's no restriction on the amount of tough fighter units you can get. So if you can spare the points, you might as well at least get that upgrade, since that's like the only special rule that this whole list has access to. So just something to keep in mind there. Would have been cool maybe to see like maybe like even like a guard unit, like an elite unit with like access to marksman or something like that, just with javelin, something a little extra. But overall, that's about as special as the special rules get here with the tough fighter versions. You do have a little bit of long range to firepower here, but just one unit. That's light infantry archers. They're not a small unit. You can reduce them to a small unit, but clash sustained of 4, so not bad for a light infantry unit. Long range up to 3. Would drop down to 2s there if you go to small unit. No armor whatsoever, but 20 points for that unit, so overall pretty good. And then you get into the skirmisher action here. So lots of different small unit javelins. You do have one or access to one as a slinger unit, which you might as well take. Again, that's a little bit more long range. And that's really it for long range firepower. So you can use some of that to, again, soften up the enemy, hopefully before they make contact or before you make contact. And then everything else is going to be close in work with your javelins. 11 and 12 points per unit for those last two there. And commanders, thankfully, it's not a list that like suffers from like leadership 7. So again, just that standard leadership 8 across the board, but no upgrades to like leadership 9 or anything like that. So it's fairly small list, but definitely still an interesting one to build, collect, play, and like paint and stuff like that. There's still really cool hobby opportunities, especially if you do some research on the Thracians and some of the like color schemes and things like that. And again, just an interesting list. Certainly not an elite list. Not a lot of toys here. All right, so yeah, overall, again, just not a lot of toys here, and you're going to really have to play smart and take maximum advantage of just all that short range firepower that you have, and then hopefully get yourself into a good situation where you're trying to fight on your terms, and probably going to have to rely on like some like multiple charges or multiple, basically like engaging enemy units with maybe like at least 2 or more of yours, and maybe like using supports and stuff like that in key ways, and again trying to prevent yourself from getting overrun and overwhelmed. So again, the best unit in quotes here kind of is that medium cavalry, just as far as dice that it throws, but also morale save. But again, it's just not much, and it's just one unit, so obviously it's not going to be everywhere. So again, you're going to have to just swarm the opponent with small units of the light cavalry, skirmishers, and just get things lined up the way you need them to hopefully do well. So again, you're basically fielding a light infantry army with just a smidgen of other stuff added to it. So overall, it's going to be an uphill battle probably in most of these fights, but again, things like terrain and maybe any scenario that you come up with could also be towards your advantage. So certainly probably don't want to play on just like a giant open battlefield with these guys and no terrain whatsoever. That might be pretty rough. But if you can again get behind the enemy, get some flanking maneuvers off, rear charges, stuff like that, there's at least potential. But again, just thinking of other more elite and sort of contemporary armies. So like the previous video, we looked at the Greeks, which just on paper at least would seem easily superior to these guys, but could make for an interesting fight too. Things like Carthage, again, just all the toys that Carthage has. Persia, we looked at them, early Persia. So yeah, there's just not a lot for these Thracians here, but still makes for a good story, makes for a good uphill battle. And if you can beat one of the big boy armies, all the better. So hope you guys enjoyed our little tour here through the Thracians. If you could, hit us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and then stay tuned for more Hail Caesar.